And I remember them coming to our college and they were just firing. They killed so many students. I mean, I saw my classmates right on the ground. It was such a shocking picture. These guys with their knives and the guns, with their uniforms full of blood as they were just butchering people with knives. Pastor, I said, the Lord has called me to serve in a time such as this. One of them just shot the pastor, and the man of God fell on the ground. Hello, I am a citizen of Burundi. I did my school in Congo. I was born in a family of 13 and I happened to be number 5. I loved music in my upbringing. I remember making my first guitar and I really enjoyed playing my guitar. Just made a simple wood, put a tin on it and some wires, and that was my first guitar. I really loved to play it, and my dad noticed the passion for music and bought me an actual guitar. And every evening when he's taking his beer, he would call me to come and play music. And as I played music, that's how he would fall asleep. I really enjoyed doing that. In addition to my love for music, I also loved reading my New Testament. I got a New Testament Bible that was given to me by the Gideons in school, and I enjoyed reading my Bible. And my dad promised that when I finish my high school, he will send me to a Bible school. I was so excited because my desire was to go to Bible school and someday become a minister of God's Word. Upon completing my high school, I reminded my father of the promise. Normally in our country or in my upbringing, a decision is made by the whole family, and especially such a major decision as to what I should study. Dad informed the rest of the family members, his sisters and brothers. They all concluded that I shouldn't be allowed to go to Bible school. In their view, going to Bible school meant I would be very poor and I would be of no help to the family. When they're investing in my education, they expected me to plow back. And so they all said no to my going to Bible school. Instead, I was sent to study agriculture. And when I was in college, the war of 1996 began in the DRC. This was a very difficult moment. I couldn't go back home because the attack of the rebels was right between where I was coming and where I was doing school. And so this was very difficult as the rebels started progressing into the city. They finally caught the city in ambush, and I remember them coming to our college and they were just firing. They killed so many students. I mean, I saw my classmates right on the ground when they were shot dead. By God's grace, the Lord preserved me from our classroom where just a few of us who survived. And I ran down the street. I went to see my pastor, who was in his house. I asked him what to do as everyone in the city was leaving. People were living in thousands. And when I asked the pastor, he said, the Lord has called me to serve in a time such as this. I can't go anywhere. Then I told him that I was willing to remain with him. So we remained in his house. And by this time, the city was in the hands of the rebels. They started going home to home, checking where there were people, and they would just break the doors and stab those who are remaining with knives. They came to the house of the pastor. They knocked at the gate. The pastor asked me if we could go and open for them, which we did. It was such a shocking picture. These guys with their knives and the guns, with their uniforms full of blood as they were just butchering people with knives. One of them looked at the pastor and said, "Would you say your last words? We have come for you." And the pastor courageously told him, "Do it quickly. We are ready to go to heaven." The rebel was in a shock. He just grabbed the watch of the pastor and pushed him back and said, "We are coming." They left us and proceeded down that street, killing other people in their homes. My pastor and I went back in the house, in a room that he had set apart for prayers. We started praying. As we were praying, he told me that his life had come to an end. And he told me, "As you remain, live for Christ and preach him." And I was like, "Pastor, these guys don't spare anyone. We are going to die all anyway." But after those words, those rebels came back. This time they never said anything. With their guns loaded, one of them just shot the pastor, and the man of God fell on the ground, on the mat. And as this guy was turning with his loaded gun towards me, his colleague grabbed the gun, held him by the hand, and pulled him backward. They walked out, leaving me there with the body. I was in a shock to the extent that I sort of lost memory. I came to gain conscious after some time. And then, after a day and two, the body of the pastor started decomposing. And when I fully gained the conscious, I was so scared. I went outside the gate, only to be shocked that the whole street was full of dead bodies. Went back in, and again I couldn't withstand the smell. I decided to go to our church, where I found one of our leaders in tears, who also lost his entire family. He had a personal boat and he wanted to cross his family to Tanzania. Unfortunately, when the rebels came by the lake, they found his family in the boat. He had gone back home to get some money, and they just shot his family. This man was at church crying, and I met him there, and I told him what happened to the pastor. He helped me. We dug at the church, brought the body, which was already in a bad shape, and buried it there. There were so many other bodies on the road, and especially children, because they were abandoned by their parents. Remember heading back to the pastor's house after burying his body. I met some rebels at the corner of the street. They stopped me, and there were a number of dead bodies around. They asked me, "Are all these guys dead?" I said, "Yes. Actually, these bodies have been here for some time." A picture that scared me is that one of the rebels got his bayonet, fixed it on his gun, and pierced it in the chest of a person who is already dead, and pulled it back. And he told me, "Get out of here quickly." I left the place, went back to the house of the pastor. And then, at this time, most people who survived had gone to the mountains. And when they didn't have any food there, they started dragging themselves back to the city, giving themselves in the hands of the rebels. And so they started selecting young people who survived, put them at the battlefront to go and face the government armies, which was really putting their lives at risk, because these are young people who never did some, military training, and putting them at the forefront, they were just being killed by the government soldiers. So they told me that they were going to pick me up also to join the army. We agreed with a few friends that we should just escape. We found a boat in the evening at the lake and started sailing to Tanzania. In the lake, we got lost. We lost direction because we were arrested by another team of the rebels who were using a speedboat in the lake. And by this time, whoever they found, they just killed them in the lake. But by God's grace, they spared us. They just got money from us and some of the belongings that we had, and then they released us. This was a journey of just a day. We ended up doing 3 days on the lake. And we were so hungry, we had no food. And we were rescued by some fishermen from Tanzania who towed our boat to the shore. And the women who were coming to buy fish by the lake, when they saw us and how hungry we were, they quickly rushed back to the community to make some food for us. And we gained some strength. After the Lord preserved me from such a situation, I remember kneeling down at the beach on the sand and made a commitment to the Lord. I said, Lord, I want to live the rest of my life for you and you alone. And my life verse is Acts chapter 20, verse 24, where the Apostle Paul says, I therefore consider my life worth nothing. My only aim is to finish the race, preaching the gospel of God's grace. From that day, a long journey started where I became a refugee in Tanzania. And there I was picked by a church. I started leading in worship and playing music at the church, and the church was supporting me. And after some time, I wanted to proceed to South Africa for further studies. The church made an offering for me, and I connected with somebody who was doing business between Tanzania and South Africa. And this guy promised that he would take me to South Africa. I gave my money to him, and we jumped on the bus heading to South Africa. When we reached Malawi, this guy escaped. He ran away with my money, leaving me desperate in the city of Lilongwe in Malawi. As I was there crying, with no hope, I can't find the guy. There was somebody selling in his shop. When he saw me, because I had just experienced some theft, there were some people in that street. It's known as Devil Street in Lilongwe in Malawi. When they sensed that I was new in the city and I didn't seem to be going anywhere, they came right on me during the day. They grabbed my small bag where I had put my clothes and ran with it, and I was just in tears. Then this guy who was in his shop selling, he saw me crying as he noticed that I was there for some time. He came, asked what was happening. I tried to explain, and then he took me to his home. I was with him for about 3 days. And then he introduced me to his church. The church started helping me. And then they helped me go to the refugee camp, as I was not legal. I was not legally living in town. And I went to the refugee camp, where I went through a lot of suffering. It's a life that I will not forget. But the Lord was really at work in my life. He opened the door for me to come back and serve with that church in town after experiencing a lot of suffering in the camp. And during my time at that church, there was a team that was doing an outreach in Malawi that was coming from Zambia. They came to the church asking if the worship team would help them in their evangelistic campaign. And so I was already leading worship in that church. And so we talked and were ready to help with the evangelistic campaign that they had. During that outreach, one of the team members who happened to come from Tanzania, he was speaking Swahili. We just enjoyed speaking Swahili together. He asked me as to how I found myself in Malawi. I shared my story, and he was so touched. He asked what was my dream. I told him I really wanted to serve the Lord, and I wanted to do some training so I can be more effective in serving the Lord. He went back to Zambia, and then he made arrangements and called me to Zambia. I was so excited, went to Zambia, did my Bible school. And as I was in Bible school, I got a scholarship from the United Nations to go and study in Canada because I had applied before going to Bible school. Now I was in a dilemma. Should I continue with the Bible school or I go to Canada? I know going to Canada, that would mean a lot to my life. But with the passion for ministry, I decided to turn that opportunity down. I continued with my Bible school training. It took about 8 years without knowing where my parents were. And then the Lord opened the door for me to go home and look for my parents. I remember arriving home. My mom was outside sweeping. When she saw me, she screamed and ran into the house. My dad was inside and he was so alert to what made his wife scream. He quickly came out only to see me. He was equally in a shock. He couldn't move forward. I told him, Dad, it's I. He didn't respond. I told him, I'm your son. I'm still living, Dad. He started crying. We cried together. We hugged. And Mom was in the house peeping through the window to see what is happening, if it's really me out there. Finally, she realized that I was still living. She came out. We hugged and cried. This so happened after they had concluded that I was dead in college among the other students who were killed by the rebels. And then people from the neighborhood came, joined my family to celebrate. And that's the day that my father made a commitment for Christ. And then he told me, son, from today, I'm just committing you to the Lord. Serve him. We already forgot about you. We are glad that the Lord preserved your life. From there, my missionary journey started. Went back to Zambia. Long story short, I met my wife. We got married. And together, we went to the seminary. And when we graduated from the seminary, we continued the ministry and decided to move to a country where we are reaching a tribe that is unreached. When we look back, when I see what I went through and what the Lord is doing, I can see how the Lord was at work even in those my dark moments. By then, nothing made sense. But today, when I look back, I can say for sure the Lord was in it all. I really want to encourage you with this story that sometimes the Lord to use you deeply, he hates you deeply for him to use you mightily. Where we are right now, we are in a place that is not safe, where being a courageous witness of Christ can put your life at risk. We have gone through so many threats, but the Lord has given us the grace to continue. And I can reaffirm the words in my commitment to the Lord when I said, I therefore consider my life worth nothing. My only aim is to preach the gospel of God's grace as I finish the race. Thank you so much for listening to my story. I hope you are encouraged. God bless you.